This is freaking brutal. So sorry about these technical problems, guys. I have no idea why that thing cut out on me. And all I can do, I guess, is continue where I left off and hope that some people come back in the room before I'm done. So I am going to go back to the presentation where I was. All right, and finally, there are certain relationship rules between you and your partner that you've established from very early in the relationship, like even from your earliest courtship, about certain norms and practices or some level of what you can and can't hear without like losing your shit because of your own level of self-esteem. And what your partner doesn't know is that you've changed. Or you now know your partner has changed. And so telling you these things may have been against your previous rules that are no longer rules. A classic example of this is that very often women fake orgasm during intercourse because an awful lot of women can't have orgasms during intercourse. So she fakes it early on in the relationship. Early on, you guys aren't in love yet, but she can kind of see that that's what you want. And it's going to be weird if you feel like she didn't come and you're going to keep trying this thing that's not working. And so she fakes it, and then she fakes it again. And the next thing you know, she's been faking it for a while. And the next thing you know, she realizes she can never tell you, because then she's going to have to admit that she's been lying to you all this time. And now she's in this very, very difficult situation to ever go back on the rule established early in the relationship. But you really like to know, because now you're a grown up and now you can handle it. You want her to be able to tell you so that you guys can work together, and you've got real ideas now on how to be a better lover for her. And if she could just tell you about this, then you guys could go take a tantra class together, go through one of my programs together, right? But she can't tell you because it's now against the rules of the relationship that were established long before you were the cool person that you are after listening to this program. So, and all of this also goes to safety. She's got to be able to, he or she has to be able to give themselves permission. And then they have to feel safe to tell you, meaning you're not going to freak out. You're not going to blow up. It's not going to be weird. You're not going to slut shame her. You're not going to make him feel weak and belittled. These are really, really big issues for us humans. So chances are your lover's going to have some concern about this. So first is going to be shame. And again, you go first helps, right? Your partner very well may feel ashamed of this thing that you don't think is shameful at all, but it's got nothing to do with what you think, it's what they think. And again, a great example is if they were sexually abused as a child, you know something went on there. Maybe you even know they were sexually abused, but there's a detail about it that they've never been able to tell you, a really difficult detail. Typically, by the way, children who suffered from child sexual abuse, they're adults now, and they know that it wasn't their fault. They know it was the adult's fault. They know that because every therapist they've ever talked to told them that, but they still feel like, well, I never told anybody. You know, all those years that I didn't tell and I was being abused. So really it was my fault. Really, I was complicit. Really, I did lead them on. Now they didn't. And we know that because they weren't the adult and they were, you know, manipulated and psychologically unready to take this stuff on. And we know that as adults, but they don't. They're ashamed of it. They've never been able to tell you that. So there's all these things that your partner is ashamed of because we all carry shame. And so your ability to go first on things that you're actually ashamed of and bring them out into the relationship, the more likely you are to be able to make them feel safe about bringing their stuff up. Judgment is obviously the bigger one. If your partner feels that there's some possibility that you're going to judge them for what they say, whether that's because of, I had a gay relationship in the past or whatever it is, right? If they feel like you're going to judge them, then they're going to clam up. They're not going to tell you. And the thing with judgment is, in order for them to feel like you won't judge them, saying, hey, I'm not going to judge you, generally will not fit the bill if they know that you have judged them for shit in the past. And judgment is sneaky, sneaky, sneaky. Let's talk about sneaky judgment, okay? Judgment is so sneaky because we don't know we're doing it all the time. So for example, A compliment can be seen as a judgment. And this is a spooky, difficult area. If you're watching this as a couple, you might want to wrestle about this later, because this is sneaky. When you say to your lover, hey, you look great today, there is a real sense of, oh, so there are other days when I don't look great. When you say, oh, I'm proud of you, you lost some weight, then they're like, oh, and when I look fat, then you're not as. So to the degree that you stand in judgment of them, they will feel judged. And that includes every compliment you give them. Now, of course, you want to be able to give your partner compliments. And it's tricky, right? It depends a lot on your partner and on the thing that you're complimenting them about. So if your partner is really insecure about something that they think is weird about their body, or they have shame around, giving them compliments around it could really backfire. I wish I could give you the rule book of step 1, find out if it's this. Step 2, eliminate the need for that. It doesn't work like that at all. You really need to intuit this. You need to be open to actually listening, hearing, and noticing who your partner really is. In a general sense, the general rule is that compliments born out of a bubbling effusion in the moment, like, oh my God, you're so sexy, are different from a temporal thing like, you're sexy tonight. Like just like openly sharing a deep feeling in real time as you're feeling it has such authenticity, because they can feel that it's actually happening in your body in real time. Like, honey, this dinner's delicious, versus, oh, wow, dinner was good tonight. Dinner was good tonight. It's kind of like, usually when you cook, it's shit, right? So you've got to really recognize how a compliment can slip in there and actually end up screwing you. And of course, any sharing of like, oh, honey, I love you so much is a safe zone, because it's not a compliment. It's a statement of what exists between you. You're my favorite person isn't a compliment, whereas that shirt is nice is a compliment. It's not like a general state of our emotions, our love. And it's generally safer to love somebody always and for who they are at all times. Like, you're my man, you're my girl. That is so different from, hey, you look like you lost some weight, which is, again, just feeding into their sense that they're evaluated by you. So if they're evaluated by you, even positively, then they feel judged, and it's going to be harder to get them to talk about the things that are difficult for them to talk about. This is a spooky one, right? And then their social insecurities. Again, this is sneaky. They may have social insecurities, or you may have social insecurities dealing with what it is that you want them to show up as. Okay, let me say that better a different way. Let's say that you want your girlfriend or boyfriend, husband or wife to show up a certain way for your friends. Like, you want them to be funnier, more open, more outgoing. You like when they dress this way. You think she should wear her makeup and high heels because it'll look good in front of your friends, because this is not about you anymore. This is about your social world. Like, oh, listen, honey, don't wear that tank top in front of my parents, right? So there's all this, your social insecurities that make him or her feel like they could be judged by you, because you're often criticizing them or wanting them to be a certain way to please other people besides you. And that makes them feel like, danger, danger, danger. I'm not safe. I could be judged because you're concerned with how I show up in front of your social world. So judgment can be very sneaky, very, very sneaky indeed. And finally, context. Again, the prerequisite of this is the previous stuff. And I talked about this starting with sexual polarity. The context is this really overlooked and important value, this tool in all of this sexual communication, which is within our communication, what's the story about? Like, why do I need to know what you want to do sexually? To satisfy my insecurities? To give you what you want because I'm not sure that you're satisfied in bed? Or because, I want some kind of a new delicious thing between us? What's the story behind why I'm asking you this question? Why do I want to know what you're holding back? Because I feel like maybe you're cheating on me and I'm jealous? Or do I want to know what you're holding back because I have a true desire to know you and to make our relationship more beautiful every day and in every way? So the context is the story. It's how is this framed? What's going on? Why do you want your partner to open up? And probably it's for all of these reasons. And there's nothing wrong with any of these reasons, but there's certain reasons, there's certain senses of story and context within which you're asking your partner to open up that are much easier for them to open up to and are much more fun and that they'd be much more willing to participate with you in. So make sure that it's a good story that you're in the middle of as you bring this piece into it. And finally, if you really want them to open up to you, consider your own desire, right? Your desire in knowing, for example, if it orients on your own sexual desire, like I want to know about what you think is hot because that's turning me on right now. That feels like a very good context, right? So if it's sourced in your own deep desire, and that desire is authentic, whether sexual or emotional, the desire for closeness, then it's probably going to handle a lot of this other stuff. All right. Creating the conversation. So this is likely an actual conversation. This is likely not a communication around body language or movement or touch the way sexual polarity might be, or even around expressing your own desires by like actually leading somebody through something. But this is probably an actual conversation. And when you create this conversation, you should create it intentionally. It shouldn't just be like the thing that comes up in the moment when, so for example, you're making love and it was lackluster. And then you're like, what can I do better to make this work? Just know that you've accidented into the conversation. There's not a lot of intentionality around it. And so creating some intentionality around it could give you better results. So let's begin with the calendar. And we've talked again about calendaring things like sex, and calendaring a relationship checkup conversation that you have on the regular is a great way to create a safe context for this kind of a conversation. So if you guys have a regular practice that every Saturday at 10 a.m., after we're finished with our coffee, we have a little relationship check-in to talk about how we feel and what's going on and how we can make it more beautiful and what would you like. And if that's something that we do on the regular and we do it as a positive contribution to our relationship together, then this stuff gets a lot easier. And if you don't have that kind of a regular conversation, you should get it on the calendar. This is the easiest way of creating the space to have much more productive, much more loving conversations. But if you don't have them regularly scheduled, then at least say, hey, I'd like to create a conversation, and set aside time and get distractions out of the way and get a babysitter or, turn the phones off so that you can really dig in deep. So create something. Manage the set and setting. Again, something we talked about in a previous session. I'm not going to go too deeply into it, but what's your partner's emotional mindset and what's the setting? Is it a subway or is it the bedroom or is it, a walk through the park on a spring day? Sometimes, by the way, a walk through the park on a spring day is the appropriate thing because it creates a certain amount of, well, you're not going to try and do something to me right now that I wouldn't like, and sometimes you really want that private cocoon. So you've really got to figure this stuff out. Context, we already talked about, like what is the story in which this conversation is occurring? Is this like, look, honey, I know things have been weird lately and I feel like we need to have a talk. I want to create a conversation around this. That's one story, right? But there's a different story that you could go into of, hey, I feel like we're just on fire right now and I'm feeling like I want to make it even more beautiful. Like that's a different conversation, right? And then there's a conversation around, so I had this little fantasy about you the other night. And I want to have a little conversation around it and see what delicious things might happen in the bedroom next weekend, that kind of thing, when we go away. So there's all this possibility for what the story is that you're entering into. And if you're not controlling that story, your partner is, right? And they may be controlling it through the lens of their own insecurities and discomforts and paranoias. So know your context, create it, and lead with it. Like, create it. Don't leave it up to chance. And listening. So in, again, previous session, I went through how to listen. The more often you listen with that kind of presence that we talked about, the more safety and permission gets built into this, the more this works, right? So hone those listening skills, practice those listening skills. And then when you create the conversation, make sure that you use those same listening skills, because what they say and what you think they're saying aren't always the same thing. And you need to check in and make sure that your own internal chatter and your own internal insecurities aren't manufacturing something that he or she really isn't saying. Because that happens, and you know that happens, right? Which means you're going to need to maintain openness and courage. Like, this is something that you need to walk into it and say, no matter what is said or not said, whether my partner opens or doesn't open, and they open and say the thing I expect them or not the thing I expect them, I'm going to stay open. I'm going to stay open. I'm not going to close down. I'm ready to hear anything, and that requires courage, and I'm entering this conversation with courage. Really commit to that, and commit to each other on that if that feels appropriate in creating the set and setting in context. Like, listen, I'm going to stay committed to being open no matter what, and I'm going to have the courage to do that, and I want you to do the same. This is going to require the dropping of assumptions. And the dropping of assumptions is hard, because when you're trying to find out, when you're asking your partner, like, listen, I want you to share with me this thing that happened in the past, or what's going on with you emotionally right now, or, what you thought about the threesome we had last night, or, whatever, like, this difficult thing is that you're trying to extract from your partner, whatever this is, right? You have an assumption. You think you know already that what they're going to say is, oh my God, it's the sexual abuse thing came up for me, or you think or no, I would never do that. I'm not interested. Yuck, no, it's really because I've been distanced from you lately because I've been cheating. Like, you think and you don't likely know. You might, but even somewhere in there, it's not quite right. So if you can drop your assumptions again and go back to really being present with your listening, then this conversation is going to be so much better, and it's going to invite them to have more of them with you. And to do this, I recommend that you ritualize leaving all the obstacles, which include previous assumptions, behind. By ritualize, I mean literally create a ritual around. And the ritual probably looks something like sitting facing each other, possibly with your lover sitting in your lap or sitting on your lover's lap, possibly holding each other's hands, staring into each other's eyes, creating what feels safe and good for you, and then taking turns in a ritualistic way, leaving the obstacles out of the conversation. So what is disinvited from the conversation? For example, I leave behind any possibility of becoming angry at anything that happens here today. And then they might say, I leave behind any assumptions I have of what I think you think. Ooh, that would be delicious to hear from your partner, wouldn't it? I leave behind any neediness for this to go one way or another. Before this conversation, I am just setting down all of my sexual insecurities and like wanting to show up as like the best lover of your life. And on, back and forth until you both feel really complete, okay? As a ritual. Now, you don't have to do this, obviously, and this may feel weird to you, but I so recommend that if you calendar a check-in that happens on some regular schedule, once a week, once a month, whatever it is, that you create this ritual as well. It will really, really change the way this stuff works out for you. Top Truth is a game that was, I believe, invented by my friend Nathan Charles, and I've talked about it before in other programs of mine because I'm in love with it. And Top Truth is a game that you can play either like, saying, hey, let's play Top Truth, or you can just play it all by yourself, solitaire, but with your partner. And Top Truth is, if you can imagine that all the things that are difficult to talk about are a big deck of cards, and that the easiest truths are on the top, and the really dark, tough stuff to talk about is at the very bottom. Then what you want to do is work your way down through the deck as deep as you can to like the very lowest card that you can say out loud without freaking the fuck out, right? So your top truth may be something like, I'm a human with certain human biological needs that I'm not particularly proud of, but, I have all kinds of sexual desires. And then they may say something like, yeah, me too. And, I that's cool. And I'm good with that. And then you feel like, oh, I've got a little more permission. And you're like, oh, okay. Because sometimes, and I love you the most, but sometimes like I see other people that I think are attractive. And that doesn't mean that I think you're less attractive or that I want to cheat or anything. But, and then they say, of course, that's only natural. And I don't expect you to whatever. And I'm sorry, sometimes I get a little jealous about that and I shouldn't be. And that's okay. And you're like, okay, because really, your sister and I had an affair. So you keep going down until you can get to the deepest truth that you can get to in that session. That's how you play Top Truth. And again, you can do it consciously. Like, we're going to play Top Truth now, you and I, because we both know what this is. And then it becomes part of, a more ritualized conversation, but it can also just be your practice. And finally, in terms of creating the conversation, to really make this conversation great, you want to just continuously, like throughout the conversation, continuously come back to orienting on love and the desire to get each other, to really get each other, to not get your way, to not feel good about your ego, to not, worry about winning and losing, or feeling like, oh, I got my self-esteem hit, or any of those other things that you do need. I mean, you want all those things, but orient the conversation itself, not on fulfilling your sexual desire, not on, like I said, getting what you need out of the conversation, but orienting on love itself and just getting each other. Just prioritize getting each other and orienting on love. And the conversation will go well. And when the conversation goes well, you can have another conversation that goes well. And there's more safety, more trust, more permission. Because sometimes that thing that you really want your partner to open up about is they're not going to be in the first conversation. It won't always be in the, I hope it is, but it won't always be in the first conversation. So finally, I get to the big move. The big move. Like, if you can get this right, then everything else will fall into place much, much more easily. But it's hard. So the big move is to surrender. And talked about surrender before. Surrender is like, it's a tough concept. Feels like, you mean give up? I mean, like, just let go, like trust, let go, and kind of like do a trust fall with each other. And sometimes you don't really trust your partner. Sometimes it's somebody you don't know that well, right? If you're single and we're dealing with this. But I'm telling you, it's all about that trust fall, because chances are it ain't going to kill you. And what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. And your vulnerability really counts in your sense of aliveness, not just with your partner, not just in your relationship, but in relationship to the life that you are in the progress of leading, your finite life. So I just hope you take me up on this. I actually, I'm working on a book right now, and I'm going to an excerpt from my book around this exact piece, which motivated this entire chapter of this course. I'm just going to read from that. First, if there is a fundamental mistake that people make in their relationships, it is this toxic and fundamentally useless hope that your partner is going to change, that they're going to wake up and realize you're right about everything, and that everything is suddenly going to be easy. One of the big moves of effective sexual communication is dropping that hope, just dropping it. In dropping hope that your partner will change, a new and otherwise completely hidden clarity enters the relationship. You can either quit or accept your partner for who they actually are, not who you want them to become. And when you do this, this opens an entirely new dimension of space in which there are entirely new possibilities for your relationship and your ability to communicate effectively, powerfully, lovingly, and enjoyably with each other. All right, let's break it down. The big move, surrender. First, hope for change is both useless and toxic. Okay, it's useless because hoping that somebody's going to change generally ossifies, makes it harder for them to change, right? They will dig in. When you want somebody to change, then they feel unaccepted for who they are, and people that are unaccepted for who they are, very, very unlikely to want to please you in any way. And it's going to make it harder and harder for them to do the change that you want them to do. So it's useless. It's actually counterproductive. It's deeper than useless. It's counter useful. So hoping for them to change, it's useless and it's toxic, right? It makes them feel bad. It makes you feel bad. As the Buddha said, you got to be careful about what you desire, because everything you desire is what makes you suffer. It's what makes you unhappy. The things that you desire that you don't have, that's where your unhappiness lives. So it's toxic for you because you're like, oh, this relationship would be great if only my husband wouldn't do this or wouldn't be like that. So it's toxic, and it makes you feel like there's something wrong with the relationship, makes you feel like there's something wrong with them. And they feel that, right? They feel that. And then they feel like shit. They feel like the relationship sucks. They feel like there's something about it that's not right, and it's unpleasant to be around you. So it is useless and it is toxic to hope that your partner is going to change. But that doesn't change the fact that most of us do, in fact, wish our partner could be just a little more, I mean, they're great, but if they could just, right? So it's natural, it's normal, completely natural and normal to not see everything about your partner as perfect. Like, some things aren't going to be perfect. If they were just a little more patient, they were just a little less judgy, like we all have something, but hoping for them to change, to not do that anymore, is useless and toxic. Dropping that hope creates a realistic clarity, Like, once you stop going, okay, all right, they're never going to do that thing. They're never going to change. I'm not hoping for it anymore. That's never going to happen. Once you drop that, then you're like, okay, now you're dealing in the world of real, because this is who the person really is. And there's some clarity to that. Like, can I just be happy with this? Is this good? Do I need to obsess about this? Or can I just be like totally thrilled and delighted and in love with my life as it is? Because nothing's perfect, and this is my life and it's good. And I'm just going to like focus on getting pleased. So there's a lot of clarity in that. Huge clarity. Once you get that they're never going to change, it also might be like, what the fuck have I been living with? This is totally unacceptable. In other words, you might get the clarity of like, I am with an evil person. I am with a sociopath. I've been putting up with shit that when I was a child, if you told me I was going to be in a relationship with somebody like this, I would have said, no way, not me, never. Like, dropping the hope that your fixer-upper is ever going to be fixed up is sometimes a real process of recognizing that your relationship sucks and you shouldn't have been doing this in the first place. I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with people who've been in relationships with somebody who was a borderline personality, and they realize, including me, by the way, I had this experience myself. And at some point you realize like, oh my God, this person, for those of you not in the know, a borderline personality is a psychological condition that is basically by, the science of psychology and the understanding that we have at this stage of psychology is something that can't be cured, because borderlines don't want to be cured. They don't see themselves as having a problem, but they are very, very difficult to be in a relationship with. And they're very, very sexually attractive in general. There's something about it that is dangerously fascinating. So you end up in a relationship with somebody like that, and you're like, well, if they could just change this couple of things that seem whack, because I'm so attracted to them. Well, dropping that hope creates clarity. And that clarity is sometimes, what the fuck have I been doing? And you realize, like, this is not something that's worth pursuing anymore. And that's valuable. But equally valuable, more frequently valuable, is that it creates a radical acceptance of who they are, and they feel that, and it does that, that toxic feeling they have when you want them to change reverses, and they feel like, oh wow, you accept me, and I kind of know that I'm shitty in this way. I kind of know that, but you're accepting it. Actually, secret, they might actually change a little bit, but don't hope for that, because they might not. But what you might get is they don't change, but all these other things that you also value in the relationship actually improve. In other words, doing this, assuming, like, when you do this, creates realistic clarity that might make you leave. But if it doesn't, your relationship will dramatically, hugely improve in all kinds of ways in which you didn't expect it to, because there's possibility now. So the meta picture of this surrender, of dropping hope that your partner will change. By meta, I mean a chunk up, a wider view, a larger perspective on this, is that you begin to interact with the true nature of the relationship, right? Instead of interacting with what I'm trying to make this relationship turn into, you're interacting with the truth of your life, the way your life really is. And the true nature of your relationship is something that, I think, if you're not too preoccupied with changing your partner, it turns out to be something more beautiful than you anticipated, which includes your capacity to accept them for who they are, for their humanity, for the fact that nobody is going to be perfect, and that their stuff is your stuff. It's like they're your fucked up person. They're not just anybody's fucked up person. You're my fucked up person, and there's a beauty to that. There's a real beauty to that, and it allows you to recognize, yeah, there's ways in which I'm fucked up, and they accept me, right? And so you begin dealing with the true nature of your relationship, and not some fantasy bullshit of what your relationship isn't, that just leaves you unhappy because of the gap between what you were hoping it was and what it really is. And when you deal with what it really is, you might find that you're surprised by the beauty you find there. So dropping hope equals space. Like it opens up like breathing room, like real space, a new dimension of depth in which to inhabit the relationship, because there was all this energy going into trying to change them, or resenting them for this thing, or not liking this thing, or wishing it away, or obsessing over why it was wrong and bad, and all the reasons that it was wrong and bad, and all the reasons that it would be better if they could change this thing. Like all of that stuff, if you really drop it, if you really surrender it, if you're like, I'm just letting this shit go, just dropping it on the floor, there's a lot of space there. And that space will get filled with beautiful things. And perhaps the most beautiful thing is new possibility, like new possibility. And when I say new possibility, I don't mean new possibility that you get to dictate, though, sure, maybe, but like new possibility that's something that you can be open to being surprised by, that there's all of this possible beauty that you have been neglecting and missing and not nurturing because you've been so busy focused on the shit that, honestly, it's not going to change. It's not going to change, right? It doesn't happen. Like, you hoping for the change is useless. It's not going to work. So this new possibility is this new thing. I mean, really a new thing. You got to think about that for a minute, because, again, life is short. And new possibility is exquisite. Now, aren't you a little curious? And, okay, so this is not okay, and then you do this, and, this is an ongoing practice, right? This is something you practice. This is not a perfect. This isn't and from now on, we're going to surrender to each other's shit that we don't like. And that's going to be that. It doesn't work that way. It'll keep coming back. It's sneaky. It'll come back when you're not looking. It comes back when you didn't sleep enough. It comes back when you haven't had breakfast and you're a little hangry. That's when it comes back. It's an ongoing practice, right? And it's a habitual thought pattern. You've been thinking it for years, potentially. So it's hard to just drop it, to drop it all at once, right? You have to keep dropping it. And each time you're like, how'd this monkey get back on my back? Get off of me, monkey. And you throw it down, and then it sneaks up on you, climbs back up on your back. You got to throw it down again. All right, it's an ongoing practice, but it's a beautiful practice. And It's the biggest move I know to get your partner to consistently open to you because they no longer feel judged, right? It's such a big move. So do this. And finally, a quote from the great Martin Buber that I think unpacks some of the things that we talked about here. Real faith means holding ourselves open to the unconditional mystery which we encounter in every sphere of our life and which cannot be comprised in any formula. Real faith means the ability to endure life in the face of this mystery. Now, when Martin Buber was a rabbi, so when he talks about faith, he means, divine faith. But his conception of divine faith was a very inclusive and beautiful one, a very spiritual one, not a dogmatic one. Read some Martin Buber, you'll like it. But if I replace faith with real love means, or real communication means, you would get this deep message, right? Real love means holding ourselves open to the unconditional mystery which we encounter in every sphere of our life. Real love means holding ourselves open to the unconditional mystery which we encounter in every aspect of our partner, right? Which cannot be comprised in any formula. And we want to put it into a formula. We want to have a formula of just, listen, you say this, you do that, and you give her the wink, and she's going to open up to you. So your desire to do that, it fucks you up, okay? It's super counterproductive to get hooked into a formula. Real faith, and he was talking about any formula meaning any Bible verse, right? He was kind of railing against the dogma of religion and a return to spirituality, which, whether you're religious or spiritual, doesn't matter. This is a formula for living that's very beautiful. Real faith, real enjoyment of life, real love, real relationship means the ability to endure your relationship, endure your life, endure your conversation in the face of this mystery. And I would replace endure even with like an open curiosity to enjoy mystery, to really just get that you will never know everything about your partner. You'll never know everything about them. But that's beautiful in a way, that there is always this mystery. And if you try and keep them in this box of who you want them to be and who you expect them to be and who they're supposed to be, expect, supposed to, want, should, right? As long as you've got this box that you're trying to keep them in, then first of all, it doesn't work, right? Second of all, it feels shitty for them and feels shitty for you because it's not working. And third, it cuts you off from something beautiful that's happening, which is this unfurling mystery of who they are constantly becoming in real time, which is beautiful with any human, and who that calls forth from you, aspects of yourself that you weren't even aware of that open in mystery for you. So the practice is so valuable, and it's going to make your relationships so much more beautiful. And hope you'll take me up on all of that. And I hope it wasn't too obscure and weird. And I'm back. Okay. Randy says, I have personal concerns that these conversations early in the relationships, pre-intimacy, pre-intercourse, pre-anything, quite frankly, will pivot this potential relationship into division since nothing physical has actually been invested. Also, in my case, it is entirely possible that she's mirroring my inexperience and halting behavior. Within the current culture, Me Too, etc., and personal integrity, I refuse to storm the battlements thinking that her reluctance is a block and she might have expectations of holding out until overpowered. Whew. Okay, Randy, there's a lot in there, and I'm not really sure what part of that to tackle first. I might try and walk into it in reverse. Refusing to storm the battlements, thinking that her reluctance is a block and that she might have an expectation of holding out until overpowered, is probably a good place to begin. So these days, you just can't do that. You don't have to refuse. You can't do that unless she specifically requests it. So that's the way that is, and it's probably the way it should be. Do a certain number of women want to be overpowered? Sure. Does some percentage of women fantasize about being held down? Sure. Some percentage of women, uh, you know, find it difficult to have a conversation pre-sex and just want things to spontaneously happen. Sure. But now we need to be a little more clever and articulate about that. And so, really, this kind of a conversation, this ability to be radically open, to drop expectations, not want anybody to change, create safety and permission, allows you to have kind of a cool conversation around that, and make it inviting. So, beginning with sexual polarity and feeling that sense of, oh, there's some sexual tension going on here. And then, being able to actually have a radically honest conversation about it with real integrity and saying, look, I dig you and I want you, and I need to be super clear on where you're at. And I want you to know that, like, if you're not into me, I'm good with that. You're not going to break me because I'm not needy. And so I'm creating safety. And like these kinds of conversations, they're attractive. And they're a different way of doing things than, grabbing somebody by the hair and dragging them off to your cave, or storming the battlements, as it were. In any case, it's entirely possible that she's mirroring my inexperience and halting behavior. So there's a gap between inexperience and halting behavior. Inexperience is totally neutral. Inexperience can be like crap. It can mean that you suck at this, right? But inexperience can also be vulnerable and beautiful and fresh and exciting and without pre-expectations. And it can be enormously attractive to men or women. Men have this misapprehension of thinking like, oh, she should be the shrinking, inexperienced one, and I'm going to boldly take her into this new thing with my great expertise. And it just ain't like that. If you read my book, Revolutionary Sex, about how to be a great lover, there's really nothing in there that says, you need to know all these tricks. It's really much more about recognizing that every woman's an individual, and whatever you read that women like, probably wrong about this particular woman. Like if there's a thing that 80% of women like, and there are such things, and you do that with the woman you're with, just the way the universe works, Murphy's Law, like whatever can go wrong will. She's one of the 20% that really finds it irritating. And I'm telling you, a lot of the stuff that really works like fucking crazy on some women, other women find it super uncomfortable and it feels terrible. And it's like, oh, stop doing that. So trust me when I say that paying attention and bringing beginner's mind, even if you're experienced, will make you a better lover, right? So you could carry your inexperience with you as something not as halting, unless you're like, well, I'm inexperienced and therefore I lack confidence. Fair. But you don't have to. It's not a given that your inexperience means halting, or hesitant. Like you can be a confident man and wear your inexperience proudly as an adventure into curiosity, and treating a woman, particularly a more experienced woman, as a ticket, as a ride, as an experience into that, and being like, look, I'm a little inexperienced, and I'm so intrigued by you, and I'm so curious by you, and it's even I was talking about context and story around why you're asking, right? Why is it that you are asking this question of a woman, like, what do you like to do sexually? And then you feel like, well, she doesn't want to tell you because she's shy and whatever. But if the story is, listen, I'm kind of sexually inexperienced, and I'm intrigued by you, your sensuality, that you something about you that's so feminine and just lights me up, man. And show me, I'm inexperienced. I would love to know like what really turns you on, and guide me into this, and let's have some real fun together. That's a great story. Okay, that's a gorgeous context. That's a context that most women would be super, super delighted to find themselves involved in. And now suddenly your inexperience is grounds for increased attraction. So just remember that context belongs to you if you want it. And if you decide you're just going to say, listen, I have very little sexual experience, then she gets to create the context. And the story might be, oh, this is going to be awkward. right? That could be the story. Or the story could be, oh, good, because you probably don't know any like weird shit that has turned me off in the past. But you don't know. You don't know what her story and context is going to be if you haven't taken control over it. So I have personal concerns that these conversations early on in relationships, pre-intimacy, pre-intercourse, pre-anything, quite frankly, will pivot into divisiveness. So it's only divisive if you have an expectation, if you have a preconceived idea about what it needs to be for you to be happy. Again, neediness equals I want something from you, with you. I'd like to have sex. I'm attracted to you. And if you say no when you're not attracted to me, then my emotional state is going to crumble, right? But if I'm like, no, I'm good with me, and it'd be super fun to be with you also, and you're into it, cool, and not, okay, good, but I still like you and we're good. So anyway, let's continue this interesting conversation. And oh, there's a very attractive girl over there. You think that you could introduce me to her? That's normal, okay? That's normal and that's cool. And there's no divisiveness there by you being more open and being a better sexual communicator. Or shouldn't be. Again, because, other people, you can't control for their mental illness, right? And their neediness. And if they get freaked out by this stuff, that's on them. That's on them, provided you've, stayed within the rules of the law and what's cool, and really shouldn't be a problem. Okay. One more thing, because I can feel where you're going with the Me Too thing. There's a lot of men out there going, well, in the age of Me Too, some woman could take what I said, take it out of context, and destroy my life on social media, and I could get fired from my job. True. Absolutely true. But just recognize that person is a sociopath and fucked up and weird, and in a small minority of very insecure, angry people. Recognize that for generations, women were able to say, any guy that I'm with, if I end up alone with him, he could axe murder me and rape me, even though I didn't want to do that. So that's always been true, right? True. And, women take their chances with us. They could die, right? Or, one could go home with you, nothing happens. And then the next day you say, yeah, I fucked her. And then everybody slut shames her. That happens, right? So just recognize this is power that men have always had. And now women have this power also. And that sucks. Men shouldn't have this power. Women shouldn't have this power to hurt each other. It'd be great if we couldn't hurt each other, but we can. So, you be careful with who you get involved with, and you take some chances in life. She could also give you an STD. You could give her an STD. You could go on a date together, and this other person, not you or her, can, plow into you while driving intoxicated. That's life, man. That's life. It's a risky business. And don't go live in your cave. Live with courage. Okay. Eric says, if I imagine times when I've been reluctant to open up and what I'd want from a partner to help me open up, that sheds light on what are helpful choices when the shoe is on the other foot. Beautiful, brother. That is right on. And that's how I created this, honestly, from my own experience, what I would want, and from having these real deep conversations with the women in my life, and then doing the same thing outside of just me and my little brain with couples that I've been counseling, right? And seeing like what worked for them and what they really wanted and what they needed. So that's, and it turns out there's a lot of overlap between what us humans need. And there's stuff that, of course, I don't know about, I've missed. It may have been right in front of me, but my own mental blocks prevented me from seeing it. So this is an imperfect program. It's the best I got. It's stuff that I see really does work. And there could be a lot of other stuff out there that does. I wouldn't close myself off to that. And does what you're sharing in this episode fall under that kind of umbrella? Yes, precisely that umbrella. And the umbrella of, the ongoing dialogues with real people, and watching what they want, watching what their results are, and getting really clear on what matters in life, which is not just getting what you want, though that matters. Like I said, I don't want to pretend like getting what you want doesn't matter. It does matter. I want you to get what you want. This program is about you getting what you want. And it can't be the priority. The priority has to be in service of really getting each other, even if it's what you didn't want to hear, even if it's what you didn't want to hear, really getting each other, being in service to love, being in service to humanity, and to real understanding will get you what you want more of the time. So having that priority is what gets you what you want. Not always, though. Not always, but you got a better shot at it, and it makes you a better person, and then everybody gets what more of what they want, not just you, but her too. And if you're a couple taking this, then you got to want that. You got to want what's best for your partner and not just for you, or or why would they want to please you? So that's what I got for you guys, and that is all the questions I have up at the moment. As always, listen, I know there's this wicked delay between my yakking and your hearing, and you may be formulating a question right now that I'm going to miss when I hang up right now. Please email it, because I will create addendums to this. I want to make sure that your specific question, if you're watching this in replay, same thing, your specific question, I want to answer it. I want to make sure that, because your specific exact situation that you're in serves as a great example for other people. And then those other people see that, and they understand the material better for their situation. And often your situation is their situation. So please don't be shy about sending specific questions. I will do my very best to address it as best I can. Again, I don't have all the answers, but I think I can be helpful, and to the degree that I can be helpful, I really want to be. So feel free to email that in. And thank you so much for spending your time with me tonight, and in trying to create more beautiful relationships. And have a good night.